Okay, so good morning. First of all, what are programming languages? Programming languages are a bunch of instructions that a programmer gives to a computer in order for it to work. The language that is understood by a computer is also known as binary, and the process of translating a programming language into a binary is known as compiling. And there are many different programming languages that are there are many different languages that are utilized in the industry today by someone, and they each have distinctive features. And there's some of them right on the screen with you. Yeah. So the first programming language we're going to discuss is COBOL, which stands for Common Business Oriented Language. So what is it? It was the first programming language developed. It was the first programming language developed to process numbers. So it was used for businesses most of the time. So in finances or human resources. It uses English words and phrases to make it easier for business people to understand what's actually going on within the program. It was developed in 1959. Yeah, and the reason why it was developed is because companies used computers from many different brands, and it was harder to transfer information from one computer to another. Yeah, and it is still being used today, even though it's very old. It's because it's constantly being updated every day. So yeah, most of the code generated today is originally being documented in COBOL and then translated into other languages. The next one is BASIC. BASIC stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. It was developed by a bunch of mathematicians in 1963 at Dartmouth College for undergraduates to make students understand a language before they actually move on to the better ones, for example, Fortran. And we'll get into that later. As computers became more accessible to the audience, BASIC was used more popularly. It was good because people could get code and could document it into their computers, and you'd get an instant result too. So if a code didn't work, you could just go back and retype it again. And the good thing about this was if you retype the same number of line, it would replace the old one. Yeah, and the next one is Fortran. So Fortran is the first high-level programming language which was used for IBM 701. IBM was this machine known as a defense calculator, which used for numerical calculations. Fortran was utilized for programming video games and numerous scientific and military applications. It was invented by John Backus in 1954. It's still being used today for many different uses, in construction industries, for example, for designing land bridges and aeroplane structures. Yeah, right more.
So the C language, it's a high-level programming language that was developed in 1972, and there's an example of one of the machines that it was built on. And it's used as the basis for a lot of other languages and a lot of other components that we know today. So it's still utilized today because it's the kernel, the core of operating systems such as Windows, the Mac OS X, and Linux, and it's also the core of a lot of mobile operating systems. And C also powers a large amount of databases and an uncountable number of small, just like little basic things that we take for granted, like credit card readers, vending machines, car dashboards, and all sorts of things like that. And it's stated by some people that the C language runs the world. So there's C++, which is a superset of C that was developed to incorporate the objective-based programming. And the suffix ++ means an additional one in the C family languages. So C++ is the next iteration of C. And indicating it's a better version of the language. And it was originally developed as an extension, with the only difference being slightly more advanced features in the object-oriented programming. But eventually it was kind of updated to the point where it became its own separate thing, and it's treated as its own separate language. And it's still used it was used predominantly in the early 21st century as an extension of C, and created many programs still used today, such as Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome. And early operating systems such as Windows Vista and Mac OS X were written in C++. So then we have C#, which is another programming language in the C family. And it's another high-level programming language that uses external toolkits to make programming a much easier and smoother process. So it was developed around 2000 by Microsoft to compete with JavaScript, which was becoming more and more popular at the time. and it used many of JavaScript's basic principles, such as the user friendliness and ease of use, and it incorporates these designs into the language. And C# is still used today in many different contexts, with one prime example being in developing video games in an external game engine such as Unity.
Okay. So the next programming language is JavaScript. So JavaScript was developed in 1959 by Brendan H. at Netscape Communications. So this was mainly developed by a feud between Microsoft and Sun Microsystems. That was when Netscape made a deal with Sun Microsystems to make a coding language for small appliances, and that resulted in JavaScript. Sun developed Java in an attempt to write a language for small appliances in 1990. It's still being utilized today. It is a standard programming language. It is utilized for the web. That is the best one out there here.
And finally, we have Python. And Python is it's really good at handling. Yeah, it's really good at handling, and it's targeted for the Amoeba operating system. It's kind of mathematical based. It was created in 1991, and it was designed as a response to the ABC programming language. And it worked on many different platforms, and it was designed for readability and kind of just a step down ease of use. And yeah, it was made for writing programs with fewer lines compared to other programming languages. So.
Which then